open up the champagne, pop. It's my house, come on, turn it up. Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. Cause we've done this before, so you come on in. Make yourself at my home, tell me where you been. Pour yourself something cold, baby, cheers to this. Sometimes you gotta stay in, and you know where I live. Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house, play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. Morning comes and you know that you wanna stay. Close the blinds, let's pretend that the time has changed. Keep our clothes on the floor, open up champagne. Let's continue tonight, come on, celebrate. That's how we do. Sometimes you gotta stay in, and you know where I live. Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house, play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my duck off the crib, the spot, the pad. But my house is your house if you throwing it back. Excuse me if my home draining the sand. Soon as these happy faces land, you can run with the cash. Home run, slam dunk, touchdown pass. Mi casa es tu casa, so it ain't no holding back. Another shot of vodka, you know what's in my glass. It's my house, just relax. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house, play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house.
Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of the day you are enjoying on your time zones, as you are either with us live here listening and watching, or when you go back and enjoy the recording. We are taking our May series focusing on mental health with one conversation further, and today we would be spending a little bit of time discussing about the direct managers, how bosses can break or build the mental health and well-being of their teams. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your host for today for a very, very short hour. And I am welcoming you on my screen from Basel, Switzerland. We have Jessa backstage helping us, as always, keeping us safe from all things technology and logistics. And we have an absolutely amazing lineup of speakers. So, Jessa, if you can just help us bringing the speakers out, and while they pop up on the screen, I will just use a few seconds to say a big, big warm welcome to everybody joining us from all over the world. I see you're already dropping your locations in the comments. Please keep those locations coming. It's always, always a joy to see where Hacking HR takes this conversation. And also a big encouragement to use the chat as your own space of conversation. Consider the questions open just as much to you as they are open to our speakers. One thing that we see over and over and over again is that every conversation is so much enriched by all the nuances across geographies, across cultures, across generations. So we will keep an eye on the comments. Always happy to bring in highlights into our conversation. So without further ado, let's dive into the topic. And what I will do, I will pass the e-mic around as you appear on my screen clockwise. And I will ask you to just shortly introduce yourselves. And also, if you can think about the most meaningful relationship you had with a line manager across your career and what made that relationship stand out. So, Teddy, welcome. You lead us into today.
Great. Thank you, Minola. Hi, everybody. Terry Shiundu joining from Nairobi, Kenya. And so glad to be here to be discussing this important topic as we continue to observe the Mental Health Month. Most meaningful relationship I've had, my current role, I have had I would say one of the best bosses, and that is Zach Hoynes, who was my immediate line manager for a while, and the one-on-one conversations on a weekly basis, just him finding out how I am doing. He got to meet my family, get to know my family, ask about my children, ask about my life, how things are going on with my studies. And it's not just about work, but he takes time, and he took his time. He has always taken his time to find out how I am doing beyond the work. And so I'm really grateful for that, and for really the bosses that we have at Village Enterprise. Truly grateful for that. Thank you. Back to you, Minola.
Thank you so very much, Terry, and best regards to Zach in case he will get across this conversation. Tammy, welcome. So good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. And hi, everyone. My name is Tammy. I'm an executive coach. I focus on leadership development for individuals, and I love the work that I do, but I didn't always do that. I started out in marketing and advertising. And the boss that I think that had the most influence on me, and the one I would rave about, is very similar to what Terry just said. His name is Robert, and he was a very tough boss. He challenged me like no boss I've ever had before, but he also took the time to make sure that I was okay, to ask about my family, to ask what my weekend plans were, and to ask the next day how things went when I had something going on. So it was a good balance of making sure I was growing and developing and getting that push forward, but also in making sure that I was a whole person.
Thank you so very much, Tammy, and well done, Robert. Melissa, welcome. So good to have you with us.
Hi, glad to be here. My name is Melissa. I have a background in human resources and operations, and just recently branched out on my own to do executive coaching and leadership development, similar to Tammy. So, yay. And I would say I've been very lucky in my career that I've had a lot of really great bosses. And I know not everybody can say that, so I feel really fortunate with that. I would say my most recent manager at my last job was very, really set a great example for like work-life balance and setting boundaries, which was really helpful. And then also, he did a lot. He really was an advocate for me and pushed me and gave me opportunities and gave me a lot of chances to learn to do new things, and, was an advocate for me with others in the organization. So I would say that was a really great boss to have. So
thank you, Melissa. Sabrina, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody, and I love seeing everybody from all over the world on this call with us today. So I'm really excited to be here. My name is Sabrina, and I am the Director of Human Resources for a company called Cormatech. We're an environmental service company. And yeah, I have to second what everybody's saying about their boss. I have an amazing boss who's actually become not just my boss, but a mentor for me as well. He allows me to be 100% me. Regardless of what's going on in the company, he's advocated for me, and he's really looked out for me. And he's like best friends with my little 8-year-old daughter. So they have an amazing relationship. He's invested in me, and I've invested in his growth as well. So it's amazing to have a great boss.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good to have you, and so thankful, so grateful for having all of you. And since you all mentioned that what makes a great boss is also, thinking about the whole person and going beyond the workplace. I also have my best boss with me right now, and she just woke up from a little nightmare, so a bit of attention seeker. Now, I would really love to dive into what are your thoughts and what are your opinions on what people say that the relationship we have with our direct manager is the most important one within the workplace. And as you just shared, even beyond the workplace. And I'm sure at one point we all heard or saw how people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. So I would really, really want to hear your opinions on that. And I will just leave the e-mic there, declare the unmuting competition officially open. So let's see who grabs it first. Sabrina, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually worked in an environment where the boss was very toxic and just degrading and spoke down to you. And while your coworkers were great to work with and you almost kind of bonded over being in a toxic environment, when you finally got out of that environment, it was a relief. Like the relief that you felt leaving and getting out of that environment was like freeing. So having that boss that is supportive and there for you and not toxic, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I can honestly say I've had more bad bosses or toxic bosses than good. I can count on, one hand, and I can tell you the number of jobs I've left because of a boss or a sticky situation like that. And it's unfortunate. And, you look at companies and the way the organizations are structured and the lack of management training as individuals go from a sole or individual contributor into management, and the shift that happens there, and the lack of training that goes in. And there's an expectation that, because you're really good at doing it this way, you're going to be really good at leading other people to do it this way. And that doesn't happen. There's so much insecurity and control that comes in there, and that tends to lead to the toxicity and all of the things. So,
let me jump in here. On the contrary, for me, I've really had great bosses across my career, my HR career for about, I've been in HR for about 15 years now. I'm the Senior Director of People and Culture at Village Enterprise. And I must say I've had really great bosses. And because of that, I have kept moving up the ladder just because of that support. And so when you find that you have managers or bosses who are really supportive, who are positive and who bring that positive culture within the workplace, there's growth happening. There's that self-motivation, self-drive in the staff. And so I've seen a lot of growth in my career trajectory as a result of the managers I've had along my career over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I totally agree, Terry. I think that your line manager is the person that knows you the best. They know the work that you do. And that when you have a good line manager that's really advocating for you and supporting you, they're going to mention your name in the room when there's opportunities available. And a lot of times it's really hard to get your name into those opportunities if you don't know the right person to talk to, or maybe the person that's making the decision doesn't know who you are. So if you have a manager that's really supportive of you, it can really help your career a lot. I mean, you have to be self-driven too, but certainly having your name brought up in the right situations is very helpful.
Yeah. I was just having a look at the comments, and Renee, hi Renee. Renee is a great friend of Hacking HR and so active and so engaged in our conversation. And she mentioned that a study, a Swiss study published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine found that employees who had managers that were incompetent, inconsiderate, secretive, and uncommunicative were 60% more likely to have suffered a heart attack or other life-threatening cardiac conditions. And those with good managers were 40% less likely to suffer heart issues. So thank you so very much, Renee, for bringing that piece of information into our conversation. Now, Tammy, you dropped a conversation candy in your round of introduction. And you said that, if I remember correctly, that you had the best relationship with a direct manager who also was quite a tough one. So how about we spend a few minutes discussing how much is love, how much is tough love, and what is the balance between, being what I guess we would label nowadays quite often as a servant leader, and how much is it about, holding people accountable.
Mhm.
And Tammy, I would ask you to lead us into this, and then everybody please jump in and build your conversation.
I think it goes back to the manager knowing, and we talked about it earlier, like, that individual the best, what drives them and motivates them. And I was highly driven to grow in my career at that stage. And that boss was also highly driven to have, high performers on his team. So it was really a perfect match. Maybe he wasn't a good boss for someone who wasn't driven in that capacity, but it worked perfectly for me. And so I think the magic happens when the boss understands what the intrinsic values and motivators are for the employee, and then really leans into those and helps to feed those and push and challenge where the opportunities exist. The manager needs to understand what's, what's motivating, what their goals and hopes for growth are, and also to see what that person can't see, both blind spots as well as potential, and to help open the doors for them to see those things. And when all of that happens, that's where the tough love, or the love in general, comes into play, to help that person, succeed in better ways. I would say, just because he was a tough leader, I wouldn't say he was not a servant leader. He would have done anything for me, and to this day still will. But he's a mentor. I still call him all the time, and he calls me when he needs help with stuff too. So it's an amazing relationship that we've built over the years. But I know he would have done anything for me if I needed it. But at that stage in my career, I needed to learn a lot of stuff on my own, and he set me up for those opportunities.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, providing that safe space where you can have those open communication conversations, and recognizing that when you are a leader, your employees are coming to you and they're going to be insecure about the things that they're not great in. And so really, advocating for their strengths, and then helping them realize that it's okay that you don't know everything, but let's find a way to help you gain in those and turn those insecurities into strengths. And I think having that space where you can provide a safe space for your reports to come to you, and have those open communications, and not feel like you're going to use that against them, really sets you up for success, for you to have a really successful, strong team, because they all feel safe and they can really work with each other's strengths, and then help develop those that make them feel insecure. And then you just have a really strong team that comes out of it, that comes together, bands together, and is willing to work hard and do whatever they need to do for each other.
Yeah, and just adding on that, on what Tammy and Sabrina have said, really, it really takes a leader to understand their team. And I think it's a good balance between providing that tough love and being honest with feedback, because sometimes it's a feedback. We say feedback is a gift, but sometimes the way it comes, it's not building, it's not motivating. And so for the leader, it really requires for the leader to understand each of his or her team members, know what their strengths are, know what their capabilities are, and that's how they can then provide the support that's needed in the workplace, such that there's clear communication, clear expectation from each individual, and that removes the stress out of the work. Even when the leader is giving that tough love, it's taken positively because there's an atmosphere that has been created in the workplace by this leader of providing feedback, ongoing communication, and really knowing how to communicate with each team member because you understand them. You provide very clear guidelines on what the expectations are. And so I feel it's a balance that, it requires really the leader to understand his team in order to provide that tough love, so that you're not breaking the team or breaking different individuals, but really providing the feedback and support that is required.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying. I think that feedback is much better received when you know the person providing the feedback cares about you and that they understand you. So it may be tough, but we grow through challenges, not through being comfortable. So we need the tough feedback. We need to be challenged, but that's always accepted a lot better if we know our leader cares for us and wants the best for us and understands what we want. So they're not pushing their agenda on us. They understand what our needs are and are help pushing forward with that.
As I was listening to what you shared so far, I kept hearing so many stories of leaders coming into organizations and turning those organizations around or their teams. At the same time, there are stories out there of organizations turning leaders around and impacting the relationship that they had with their teams. So, how much is it organization and how much is a personal set of values and a personal leadership style coming into the conversation?
I think it's, there's a little of both in there, for sure, because most people, not everybody, but most people are taking jobs that somewhat align with their, at least align in some way with their personal values. So when those personal values aren't aligned with the organization, then that's when it can get a little strained and it can get a little uncomfortable for the employees, because the employees feel that when their managers don't align with the organization. There's only so much you can do to hide that. We're not as transparent as we think we are, or I guess we're more transparent than we think we are. So I think that there's a little bit of both there. For sure, your manager is going to be the one that has the most contact with you, but there's also going to be things within the organization. There's going to be, if the organization wants a certain type of leader, one that is more coach-like and more supportive, and your manager is not that way, that manager should be held accountable to that behavior, and vice versa. Maybe the organization is not as is more driven by tasks and repetition and red tape and things like that, but your manager is caring and supportive. You might be able to get through some of those things if your manager is looking out for you.
Sabrina, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, I agree with Melissa. There is a little bit of both, but I think, part of what your values are is when you go to a new organization is what is the culture of the organization? And I think that's really key nowadays. And especially coming out of this pandemic, that's becoming a really big thing. You don't just have the technical skills, but you need to fit in culturally with the company, and they need to fit in with how you are as well. And when those two marry up, I mean, the things that you can accomplish within the organization and within your team, sky's the limit. And when they don't marry up, it's a conflict that's waiting to happen, whether that's with the conflict with the organization and what they stand for, or a conflict within your team. And so I think that culture is really key for both the organization and for the leadership and for the employees as well.
But I think it's understanding the depth and importance of the culture and the corporate values too. I can't tell you how many times you see, these are our values, this is our culture on paper, but that's not really the reality of what it is. And so you do see these little pockets or these like mini ecosystems of this is the culture of this team and this is the culture of that team, and they're very different. So a lot of it depends so much on the manager and certainly the organization and how things are run, lip service or actual integrated culture. So there's a lot of variables in there.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with everyone. What you have said. It's really about the culture, but also is the leader adaptable? Can they adapt to the culture of the organization? Because oftentimes you will find that when the leader comes in and they are not able to easily adapt to this new culture, for example, somebody coming from the nonprofit and you're joining a corporate organization. So the corporate is thinking about the numbers, the business, the money, but you have come from a setup where you're thinking donor reports and what is out there and everything is funded. So if the leader is not able to adapt, that's where the conflict comes in, and you will find that more often than not, that leader may not last long in that organization if they are not able to adapt to the culture. I have made it a practice always before, joining any organization to go to certain websites just to look at what the employees are talking about that organization. It's always good to find out what's the culture like. And you will find that a lot on Glassdoor. What's the culture like? Feedback from different people, employees, former employees, and that gives you an idea of what you're getting into. So it's really important, not just your values, but also what is the organizational culture, because it is likely to change you or to, either you adapt, shape in or shape out, as we say it here in Africa, So it's 50-50, I would say. Thank you.
That's a wonderful saying, Terry. Shape in or shape out. I will use it. I will pay you royalties in ice cream and coffee when hopefully we meet up in person. So our conversation, at least it feels to me that was focused on almost one-to-one relationships with our direct managers. So my invitation to you is to talk about the relationship a direct manager has with their teams. So how can anyone having direct reports, how can they embed this focus and this intentionality and curiosity and compassion to some degree in their ways of working as a team and go beyond the individual connections? Tammy.
Unmuted first. The biggest thing to me is, certainly the manager has to understand the individuals, but they also have to understand the team dynamics. Some of that is interpersonal relationships. Some of that is understanding strengths and gifts between team members. So where someone might have a deficit or a growth opportunity, they can lean on another person on the team to help balance that out. Some of it's the camaraderie and making sure that there's the ability to have fun together, to have trust, to have the ability to feel like a cohesive team, and making sure all those things are functioning well together. The other thing I think a manager has to understand when thinking about the team as a whole is what's the greater good. So as they're making decisions, how do I operate at the individual level and how do I operate for the greater good, and use those as points of information when moving the team or initiatives or whatever forward.
Just to add on what Tammy has said, for the leader, I think it's also important to model the acceptable behavior as a leader, so that the team understands the boundaries, understands the acceptables, understands this is how we work together as a team. And when the leader can model that behavior, for example, as something as simple as the leader also taking leave. We have this annual leave and all these types of leave, but sometimes leaders are overwhelmed. It's too much work. And so you will find that it is the boss who is not taking leave and they are constantly working. And really, that will make your team afraid to ask for leave because the boss is not taking leave. He never goes off. He's always working, or she is always working. And so how can the rest of the team understand that taking a break is important? You know, getting off work is important, or just taking, you know, that break. So it's important also for the leader to model the right behavior for the team so that the team can copy and work along with that, knowing these are the limits or this is the acceptable behavior with our boss. Yeah.
Sabrina, I saw you unmuted, and then Melissa, you are the hero today. You go last, and I know that going last is a hot seat in these conversations. Sabrina, please.
You know, I just, I mean, Terry and Tammy really hit on everything is understanding your individual and being able to anticipate what they need. You know, a lot of times your employees or your direct reports are looking to anticipate what you need, but being able to anticipate what they need and really recognizing, like, if they are struggling or they're stressed out about something, and having those one-on-one conversations and really addressing, okay, what is it that you need in here? And if that means that you have to jump in as a leader and help them out, or say, okay, listen, it's okay, take half a day, you need a little bit, like, this will be here tomorrow, and recognizing what it is your team needs and what each individual contributor to your team needs as well is important.
And I, agree a lot with what Terry said with the modeling of behavior. I think that's so important for the leaders, is they have to model that behavior. If, if our team doesn't see people acting in a certain way, I mean, it can go, leave is important, like taking leave, answering your emails, sending emails over the weekend and after hours. Like, if you're doing that, even if you're saying, hey, I don't expect you to answer this email, but I'm going to go ahead and send them all weekend, what they see is, oh, my manager needs to answer emails all weekend or needs to send emails all weekend. So if I want a promotion or if I want to be seen as a high performer, I better do that too. Even though they're telling me not to, I think I probably should. So we're psychologically sending that message of, you have to do these behaviors. So I think it's really important to model the behaviors that you want to see from your team, so that they feel comfortable doing those as well. And I think in regards to, like, how to manage the team, I think it's also important to look at those team dynamics and making sure if somebody is shyer and sitting in the corner, pull them into the conversation, get their input too. Let everyone know that it's important to hear from everyone on the team in the project. It's important for everyone to have a role in the project. We're going to be successful if we work together as a team and pull this through the finish line together with everyone's unique perspectives, rather than relying on one hero to save the day. And so I think that's an important part of team leadership. I think both of those two things can be really challenging for new leaders that have not had to experience either of those things before. Sometimes when they become leaders, they think, oh, I have to do all these things to show how important I am, or to show that I'm capable of doing this role. And it sets up that wrong expectation with the rest of their team. And also they struggle because they struggle pulling every single person in and making sure everybody has the same opportunity to be part of the conversation, be part of the project, just because that's a learned skill. It's not innate to everybody. And I think Tammy mentioned this early in her introduction, the training for new leaders is not there in a lot of places. People are the best employee at their job, so they're made a leader, and that's not always a recipe for success. And especially if they're not provided with the training that they need to do the job well. And that's one area where I think is lacking in training.
I am so happy and so grateful for how easy you make my job here today. And we are literally just crossed into the second half of our conversation. And, a small confession. Across the conversations I have been privileged to be a part of, I kept one eye particularly tuned to picking up, signs of leaders are expected to and it's a leader responsibility, and the leaders own one thing or another. And I just want to keep everybody mindful of not, perpetuating this lopsided conversation. And you all mentioned expectations. I see people pick up on expectations management, and expectations contracting in the comments. So here's the spin for the next few minutes. In order for bosses to be great bosses, what do they need from their teams? And Melissa, I will ask you to go first, just as a special reward for going last on so many rounds. I will give you a few seconds just to welcome everybody who just joined us, over the last few minutes. And in case you feel you missed out on a great conversation so far, you are right, but you can watch the recording on hackinghrlab.io. So, Melissa, please.
Yeah. So, what do leaders need from their teams? I think that what leaders need from their teams more than anything is grace and understanding. I think that we have a tendency to put leaders on a pedestal, and they should know how to do all the things. And we were just talking about modeling the behavior you want to see, which I feel strongly in. I do believe that's important, but also leaders are humans. And they are not going to be perfect. They are going to make mistakes. They are going to say things that they shouldn't say. They are going to send an email over the weekend that could have waited till Monday morning. And I think they're going to overlook somebody sometimes when they shouldn't. And we're all growing and we're all learning. And so I think the most important thing that leaders can ask for from their teams is grace and understanding on the journey.
Sabrina.
I wanted to mention something that Renee said, and that just really feeds into what you're asking here. A lot of times as a leader, you have this expectation to always perform and always provide and always have the ideas and the answers. And I think Renee hit on something that is really dead on. When you surround yourself with really good people, sometimes it's good to just take a step back and see what they bring you and their ideas. And, so the expectation isn't always that you're performing at that level, but allowing your people to step up and, give you those ideas without being swayed by your input, I think is key. And I think it will make for a great team dynamic when you allow them to really put forth what they are passionate about and take a step back and see what they're able to do for you. And that way it takes a little bit of that pressure off of you as well.
There's a wonderful, wonderful short story. I heard it through various keynotes from Simon Sinek. And he talks about Nelson Mandela sharing how he came to learn all the great leadership lessons. And he said that his very early onboarding into leadership was following his father around. His father was a tribal chief. And he said that in all the tribal meetings, they would all sit in circle and the leader will always speak last. So what we picked up from the comments and what you shared, Sabrina, just reminded me of that. And Terry, I saw you unmuted, and thank you for giving me a few seconds.
No, thank you. I just wanted to add that leaders need feedback from their teams. Many times a leader would be making or might be making a fool of himself in front of the team, and the team is not even talking or giving feedback or telling the leader, what's going wrong. And I think that's probably it's about building trust, and that has been mentioned here, where as leaders, we build trust with our teams enough that they can give us feedback when we are missing the mark or taking the wrong step or leading in the wrong direction. And that is so important because, as Tammy said, is it Melissa? As Melissa said, leaders are not perfect. They get vulnerable. They're also having some struggles. As leaders, you're also having personal struggles, personal challenges. So that feedback from the team is helpful and also helps with the leaders' mental health. because part of the greatest team that is suffering with mental health issues are the leaders, the top leadership of organizations. So that feedback from the team is really, really important.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been shared. And I don't necessarily have a lot to add. The only thing that really comes to mind is, in that same vein that with Terry, being vulnerable and saying when they're struggling with something, or when they openly want to ask for specific feedback. I also think, we're focusing a lot on the leader down, right? Like, what do we do for our team? But leaders also have leaders. Right. So getting that feedback and having that same relationship or openness or vulnerability or empathy and humanity, whatever, with their leadership as well, to make sure that they're also getting that support and encouragement and challenges and growth opportunities there as well.
Well, I really love this call to, space and grace and feedback. And if we look at our workplace today, I can't imagine anything more complex, anything more sophisticated, anything more demanding of a leader's own mental health. Working hybrid, working remotely, working across cultures, because this work from anywhere, regardless of how flexible, geographically we apply it, but the world is open in terms of talent. Yeah. Even work across time zones. Yeah. Work across generations. There are 5 generations currently in the workplace, and I think I read somewhere that this is the most diverse slice of humanity we have in our workplaces today. And Daddy, I really loved the point that you made about leaders' self-awareness and grounding and, self-compassion and self-curiosity and self-courage towards their own mental health. So can we just take a few minutes and really talk about how their own mental health journey, just shapes their relationship with their teams?
It's really important that even when we talk about mental health in the workplace, that we, oftentimes we think about the employees, but not the leaders of the organization. So even when we are bringing in activities and, different mental health awareness activities, the target usually is the employees, but not the leaders. But we realize leaders have to deal with so much stress, and it starts with a leader, first of all, being able to understand themselves, that aspect of self-leadership, emotional intelligence, so that they are able to lead their teams and provide that safe space for the mental well-being of their teams. Because when a leader is not in the right place mentally, then they pass on the stress to the team, and you will see it reflected in the team. And you will see they don't give that support that's required. They probably stress the team. They ask for too much beyond, expectation. But when a leader is self-aware, they are taking care of their mental health, as an individual, thinking about their emotional well-being, then they can pass on the same to the team. And it comes back to the modeling behavior from a leader. So really, all these dots somehow connect with what we are just talking about. Yeah, thank you.
The modeling is critical. And I think about teaching your team how to have stress release, right? Whether it's in your team meetings, having breathing exercises, or encouraging stretching or mini breaks in the day, or I talk about, like, Arianna Huffington talks about compound stress and the impacts to your health, and how if you can do a 60 to 90 second release, like how significant that can be to your mental health, right? So there's all these little things, and if leaders can build those into daily life to really normalize it, then they're better naturally just because they're doing it, and then their teams can do it without thinking that it's weird or I'm weird because I have to do this thing to feel better, et cetera, et cetera. I think the modeling is mission critical, but I think we have to start normalizing conversations and activities to help everybody feel and be better.
Yeah, and to, jump on to that, and also something Tammy mentioned earlier about we have to remember that leaders have leaders. And I think one of the really struggling groups of people are middle managers, because it's hard. You're managing expectations of the teams, and there's so many expectations right now. But then you're also managing the expectation of your leaders. And so you've got it coming from all areas outside of whatever you have going on in your personal life as well. So it is important to find those ways to manage your own stress, manage, the accountability, find some sort of release, find a hobby, find something that brings joy to your life to help release some of that stress. Maybe it's working with a therapist, maybe it's working with a coach, maybe it's just finding some of those little things you can do throughout the day, whether it's taking a deep breath. If you have an Apple Watch, it can tell you to breathe every hour or something like that. It just some sort of little reminder throughout the day to take that break, take the 15-minute walk at lunch. Whatever it is that provides you with that mental break, helps you relieve some stress. And then try to get some clarity and expectations around whatever's causing you the stress. And can we reduce whatever the stressor is? We can't get rid of our bosses, and we can't get rid of our teams, because this is what we do. This is our job. But is there a specific thing about that relationship, or is there a specific job duty, job function that's causing us some major stress? Is there some way to provide clarity or expectations around it, or extend deadlines, or whatever it may be that's kind of compounding that stress?
Sabrina, I don't know if it's just me, but there's a little bit of a time loop, between when you actually start speaking and I see movement in your small box. So I apologize.
No, that's okay. I have closed everything down to try and get rid of the lag, but I do know that there's a little bit of lag. I don't have a whole lot to add, except that I think people really need to, self-aware is key. And I think also being okay to say you're not okay. People need to learn to do that more often, as opposed to trying to hide that you're not okay.
Well, I will ask, for all of you to keep me honest, and keep in mind just to have a few minutes to share some tips and tools and tricks towards the end of our conversation. But between now and then, I am curious if there is anything, or let me rephrase that. I'm speaking faster than I think. That might be dangerous. So, how can HR professionals help the relationship between direct managers and their teams? And how much is support? How much is coaching? And when does it become too intrusive and maybe upsetting the natural dynamics? Let's see who wants to lead this one. Sabrina.
I'll go. I think, really knowing your leaders and their reports, and really kind of understanding what their strengths are and the skills that they have, and then being able to fill in those gaps to get them that training and the development that they need, so that they can be better leaders and have those better relationships with their direct reports, and then with their, the people that they're reporting to. I think when you have that, and you have the ability to tie that all in together, that, that's one of the biggest things that you can do in human resources, is really anticipating your people, understanding them, and then getting them training and the development that they need to just make them better than they already are.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think for HR, it's important to normalize the conversations in the workplace. Um, because when we talk about mental health, well-being, it's really it takes some initiative. It doesn't just come naturally because there's too much going on. People are busy. So it seems like extra work. So it's important for HR to normalize these conversations, provide avenues and opportunities for these conversations to be held. And also importantly is also provide coaching or support for leaders to be able to support their teams. For example, how can leaders identify that their team members are stressed or somebody on their team is having a hard time? So just providing for HR, really, it's important to provide that coaching for leaders so that they're aware of what's going on. They have that awareness of not just self, but also of their teams and what's going on. And when need be, they can come in and mediate as necessary, but really to provide a support to the leaders to be able to support their teams. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think providing resources, reminding people what resources are available. So reminding them about the EAP that's available, reminding, this person's having a difficult time. Do you remember that we have paid family leave or whatever options your organization has? Just reminding them about these resources that are available that they may have forgotten about. As Terry said, also, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you have to step in and say, okay, I can see that you're frustrated with this situation. You're frustrated with this team member. Let's look at this from their perspective. What challenges might they be experiencing right now? Or how could we look at this a little bit differently? They're not getting their project done. However, what else might be going on here? So helping them see some different opportunities, some different perspectives. And then, as Terry said, occasionally you have to jump in and mediate. That's never the ultimate goal, but sometimes that's needed. But if we can start with the tools and resources and, coaching through conversations as needed, hopefully that helps a lot.
So we are about 10 minutes away from a very painful moment, and that's the moment of goodbye. And I will keep myself honest to my promise to really make the last leg of our conversation a little bit more actionable. And a few years ago, I strongly believe that books find people when people need the books. And one of these books that found me when I needed it most is an amazing writing from Karen Rinaldi. It's called It's Great to Suck at Something. And it basically advocates for finding something that you're hopelessly catastrophic at doing and do that and celebrate that, because it makes you comfortable with, letting go the expectations of being perfect. It makes you comfortable with saying, I don't know. It makes you humble. So that was a big find, and I recommend that book to everyone. And then recently I read a piece of research within the vertical development dimension. And the whole study started with a very senior executive with a tenure of over a decade within an audit company, with a turnover, a phenomenal turnover, people leaving after 2 years max. And they asked him, what's your secret? And he said that he was absolutely, miserable, on the verge of burnout, when he discovered tango. And he said, I spend my working hours in my head. And when I dance, I am in my body and I am in my heart. So that was a research advocating for find something that is almost complete opposite of what you normally do, just to balance. So long story short, the floor is yours once again. What are some of the tips, tricks, tools, secrets of the trade that you want to leave our audience with? Let's see who wants to go first. Mounting Tammy.
I'll just first thing that comes to mind, and maybe I'll want to add something later. But just from a inspirational point of view, if you haven't read Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, I would recommend that book. I think there's something really powerful about understanding what emotions are and how to communicate with them and use those words to express how you're feeling and what that means. There's something really powerful about being able to state how you're feeling in a moment. And all too often we bury it down deep, and then it festers, and then, we think we've processed it, but we haven't, and it comes back later, and whatever else happens. And I don't mean to go into a therapy session right now, but I think the ability for us to communicate those things will only help our mental health and well-being, and it will only help us be better performers at work or leaders or whatever we're trying to accomplish in or outside of the office. So that's a tip I'll toss out to get us started.
That's a great tip, Tammy. I think, one thing that we can do is a little bit of like job crafting. And if you're not familiar with job crafting, it's, making the job, fit people's strengths. And so I think sometimes when we look at jobs and we're feeling stress and burnout, this goes for leaders and individual contributors. Sometimes it's because the job doesn't match the things that we're passionate for. And so my goal has always been to have like 70% of the job is something that I'm passionate for and enjoy. And the remaining 30% is the stuff that has to get done that maybe I don't love it, but I need to get it done. But I think making sure that us as managers and our team members are doing jobs that play to their strengths helps a lot with burnout at work because they enjoy their job. They enjoy it and they want to do it. So that is one tip.
Okay, so mine is it's this video, and you guys could probably Google it. You could find it on YouTube, and it is this. It's really simple, and it's cute, but it has a big impact to the message behind it. And it is this teacher, and she is like a kindergarten or a first grade teacher, and usually on the first or second day, she will have a conversation with her students, and she'll bring in Band-Aids. And what she says is, okay, have you ever, bumped your head? And the students will say, yes. And she'll say, okay, here's a Band-Aid for your elbow. And they're like, okay. And then she'll say, have you ever bumped your knee? And the students will say, yes. And she'll say, okay, here's a Band-Aid for your elbow. And she'll give a few more examples, and it'll lead back to her giving them a Band-Aid for their elbow. And after a few examples, they're kind of confused as to why, well, I bumped my head, my leg, everything but my elbow. Why does everybody keep getting this Band-Aid for an elbow? And what she says is that I can't always give you the same thing that I give someone else, but I'm going to give you what I need that's going to help you be successful. And not everybody's success is going to end up being the same tool that everybody gets. And she really does it because you have all of these kids that are coming into class, and they each have their own needs, and she has to provide them with something different, a tool that's going to help them be successful. And I think it's just a very powerful message that something so simple, if you take that and put it into the workplace, in HR, we have to learn how to be fair and consistent, but that doesn't always mean that you provide those people with the same tools to help them be successful. So it's a cute video, but the impact is powerful, at least for me.
Wow, such great tips from everybody. One thing I always say is that you will never know what you can do until you try. And I love this quote by Charles Tremendous Jones. He says that you will be the same person in a year as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And so one thing I like to do is bounce off ideas from people. So like just talk to somebody, book an appointment with somebody who is higher than you. Just ask them for feedback. Reach out to a friend, ask for feedback, because everything every day is a learning process, is a growth process. And so the more you learn about yourself, your strengths, what you're capable of, the more you stretch, then the better you become, whether it's at mental well-being, your relationship with people, better at doing your work. So I would just like to put it out there, just try something different. Try it. Even if you don't believe you can do it, just try it and bounce off, those thoughts, those ideas off your colleague or somebody else that you can trust. Thank you. Thank you, Minola.
Thank you all so very much. And one thing that you all mentioned in different ways is the platinum rule. So we moved from treat people how you want to be treated to the platinum rule, treat people how they want to be treated. And I will just honor the round of sharing at the beginning that you had with my own. I've had the immense privilege to have two absolutely amazing bosses. One of them is the one that I currently have. Sometimes I even doubt he's human. He's absolutely amazing. And another one many years ago. And she taught me something. Whenever I would walk into her office, and especially when she felt that there was something going on, she would always ask one question. Do you need to vent, or are you looking for a solution? And that taught me to help people how they need to be helped, not what help I had readily available and, time tested. So just, I can't resist to just squeeze one round of mic drop moments. So the final question is, if you would recommend our audience to focus on one skill, one critical skill to make sure that they improve their relationships in the workplace, what would that one skill be? And what I will do, I will ask you to speak counterclockwise. That means, Sabrina, you will go first. Just one skill that will make or break their relationship within the workplace.
I think be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's the only way that you grow and develop.
Thank you. Melissa?
Deep listening for the thing beneath the thing, not what's coming out on surface.
Thank you. Tammy?
Ditto to Melissa. I was actually going to say intuitive listening. So what's said, what's not said, and what's implied underneath.
And Terry, bring us home.
Emotional intelligence. I would wrap it up with emotional intelligence. Be self-aware and know that helps you to understand those around you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much, Terry, Tammy, Melissa, and Sabrina. It's been a wonderful hour. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time and the curiosity and the headspace to be here, either live today or later on in the recording. Please do visit us either on our Hacking HR page on LinkedIn or hackinghrlab.io, and you will get to see all the wonderful conversations we've had so far in our monthly series, but also what we have been cooking for June and beyond. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Jessa, for your help, and hope I will get the pleasure and the privilege to welcome you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.